September 2017. Continuing our series of fine poetry, poems that touch deeper chords. Today we begin the first of a number of sessions on Matthew Arnold, 1822 to 1888. I use Wikipedia frequently for biographical information, and I find on the whole excellent articles. So here are some extracts. Matthew Arnold has been characterized as a sage writer, a type of writer who chastises and instructs the reader on contemporary social issues. Arnold is sometimes called the third great Victorian poet, along with Alfred, Lord Tennyson, and Robert Browning. Arnold was keenly aware of his place in poetry. In an 1869 letter to his mother, he wrote, "My poems represent, on the whole, the main movement of mind of the last quarter of a century, and thus they will probably have their day as people become conscious in themselves of what that movement of mind is, and interested in the literary productions which reflect it. It might be fairly urged that I have less poetical sentiment than Tennyson, and less intellectual vigor and abundance than Browning. Yet, because I have perhaps more of a fusion of the two than either of them, and have more regularly applied that fusion to the main line of modern development, I am likely enough to have my turn as they have had theirs." Stephen Collini regards this as, quote, "an exceptionally frank, but not unjust, self-assessment." Arnold's poetry continues to have scholarly attention lavished upon it, in part because it seems to furnish such striking evidence for several central aspects of the intellectual history of the 19th century, especially the corrosion of faith by doubt. No poet, presumably, would wish to be summoned by later ages merely as an historical witness. But the sheer intellectual grasp of Arnold's verse renders it peculiarly liable to this treatment. Harold Bloom echoes Arnold's self-characterization in his introduction as series editor to the Modern Critical Views volume on Arnold. Quote, "Arnold got into his poetry what Tennyson and Browning scarcely needed, but absorbed anyway, the main march of mind of his time." End quotes. Of his poetry, Bloom says, quote, "Whatever his achievement as a critic of literature, society, or religion. His work as a poet may not merit the reputation it has continued to hold in the 20th century. Arnold is, at his best, a very good but highly derivative poet. As with Tennyson, Hopkins, and Rossetti, Arnold's dominant precursor was Keats. But this is an unhappy puzzle, since Arnold, parentheses, unlike the others, end parentheses, professed not to admire Keats greatly. While writing his own elegiac poems in a diction, meter, imagist procedure that are embarrassingly close to Keats. Sir Edmund Chambers noted, however, that, quote, in a comparison between the best works of Matthew Arnold and that of his 6 greatest contemporaries, the proportion of work which endures is greater in the case of Matthew Arnold than in any one of them. Chambers judged Arnold's poetic vision by, quote, its simplicity, lucidity, and straightforwardness, its literalness, the sparing use of aureate words or of far-fetched words, which are all the more effective when they come, the avoidance of inversions, and the general directness of syntax, which gives full value to the delicacies of a varied rhythm, and makes it, of all verse that I know, the easiest to read aloud, end quote. The Song of Callicles. Through the black, rushing smoke bursts, thick breaks the red flame. All Etna heaves fiercely her forest-clothed frame. Not here, O Apollo, are haunts made for thee, but where Helicon breaks down in cliff to the sea, where the moon-silvered inlets send far their light voice, up the still vale of Thisbe. O speed and rejoice! On the sward of the cliff top lie strewn the white flocks. On the cliffside the pigeons roost deep in the rocks. In the moonlight the shepherds, soft lulled by the rills, lie wrapped in their blankets, asleep on the hills. What forms are these coming, so white through the gloom? What garments out glistening the gold-flowered broom? What sweet breathing presence out perfumes the time? What voices enrapture the night's balmy prime? 'Tis Apollo comes leading his choir, the 9. The leader is fairest, but all are divine. They are lost in the hollows. They stream up again. What seeks on this mountain the glorified train? They bathe on this mountain, in the spring by their road. then on to Olympus, their endless abode. Whose praise do they mention? Of what is it told? What will be forever? What was from of old? First him they, the Father of all things, and then the rest of immortals, the action of men. The day in his hotness, the strife with the palm, the night in her silence, the stars in their calm.